This is a brief overview of Dynamic 3i multilingual and translation capabilities. The software is available in multiple languages, so you can use the software in your own native language. All forms, menus, and reports that are printed from the application will be printed in your language of choice. The language appearing on the screen is determined by the individual users running the application. So, for example, if your company is a multinational company with operations in various parts of the world with different languages, the users in each office can run the software in their own language. Or you may even have situations where you have a call center with users sitting side by side, but they all could be using the application in different languages. So if you have clients that are calling specific users and they're working all day long in Chinese or in French, and the user next to them may be working in English, each individual user there can run the application in their own language. And the same executable set of programs is being used no matter what language. So there's not a separate set of programs for French and a separate set of programs for English. And this is quite advantageous for updates of the software or patches to the software. You only have one set of programs. You don't have one for each individual language. And this is possible because the translated text found in the screens and on the reports is actually stored within the database. So when System Dynamics sends out the application to you for the first installation of the software, the various languages come within the database that's being installed. So if I'm going to quickly just go into the global module here, and what happens within the application is in our maintenances under System Administration, in our user file maintenance here, when we're setting up our users, we just simply set up the user's language here, and this will be the language that the user will see their forms and their reports in the application. Now further down the menu here, we also have translation capabilities, and we're going to just briefly discuss these momentarily. Dynamic 3i comes with translated software, but once you have the application up and running, the users are able to make translations of the software in real time. So for example, if you have some corrections to make to the translation that's come, perhaps there's some dialect changes that you wish to make, or maybe even some industry specific changes to the various forms and reports within the application. This is all done in real time. We have a program in here where we can call up individual programs within the applications, both front-end forms and reports, and we can make changes to those, and that's called our translation maintenance by program. And we can bring up our program here. I'm going to take a look at, for example, our check entry, which I happen to know is AP1300, and I'm going to query on the French language. So we can come in here, and what we see here on the left side of the screen is the base English language here, and here it is translated into French, and we're going to see the various fields on the screen, and including the hint lines, and we can go in at this point, make these changes, and then when we go back into the check entry screen, we're going to see these changes immediately on the screen. But there's another way of doing this. If you're actually sitting in a particular program, we're just going to pop into our check print screen. User can go in there, click on help, and go down to translate program, and that will automatically load up the program for you for translation. Now in this case here it came up in English because I'm actually running the application within English, but if I had been the French user, I would have saw my translated text here, and then I can go down and make any subtle changes that I wish, or actually I could just change the whole translated text, or maybe even change a hint line to something that's more meaningful to us. So that's the immediacy of the application translation. It'll happen once the user saves off their changes. Now we also allow for special documents that are printed on the application to be printed in your customers or your vendors' own native language. So you may be running the application in French, but perhaps you're shipping things out such as packing slips and invoices to people in Germany and in Italy and France and England. Those documents will be printed using the language of your customer or your vendor. So if we're just going to quickly just go into our customer file maintenance here and query upon a customer. And if we go in here, this is where we set up our language for our particular customer. We can set our language up here. Same type of thing in the vendor file maintenance. We set up the language of our vendor so that when a purchase order is produced for a vendor, it will come out in their vendor's native language. Now we have a screen here called Document Forms Translation. This is where we actually call up the various special forms, the purchase orders, the packing slip, the invoices, the accounts receivable statements, the account receivable past due letters, and this is where we can do the translation on those specific forms. So I'm just going to query up my invoice print program, which I happen to know is OE2500 under the French language, and what I can do now is go down here and translate this text if I wish, and it looks like most of it has been translated, but there are a few fields here that are yet to be translated. For example, the invoice balance. I would just make that change, immediately save it, and my invoices then are ready to be printed with all the headings in French for my French customers. Now we have a few other programs here that can be maintained by the person who would probably be in charge of translating, and some of them are some of our own internal program messages that you would see within the screens. These are just warning messages, things of that nature, error messages, and there's listings for these type of messages in the system, so you'd probably want to just print out a listing of these messages, go in here and then specifically pick out some of the messages that you wish to correct the translations on or change them to something more suitable to your language. But these will all be translated when the application arrives at your site. For example, this is a system generated message in the shipping confirmation program, and if we're running this in French, for example, the application, we would see the translated text here, and we can make a change to that if we wish. We have some other standard messages within the system. These are more or less system-wide messages, such as field must be entered, 0 not allowed in this field. These are just type of messages that can also be maintained in this screen. This is probably a one-time thing that you would do initially at system startup for these type of messages within the system. We also have status messages for our various applications, and these can also be changed in this program here. So here's another example of our status messages. Here we've put it in French, and these are, for example, this is our adjustment table in our inventory module, and some of the statuses that the adjustment can be found at, and if we're running it in different languages, we can translate that text in this particular screen. And finally, I'd just like to show you the translation by string. What you can do in this program is if you wanted to go across the board within the application, and for example you wanted to change the word address to something else that's maybe spelled a little differently or a different word, you can go into this program and you can do a mass change of that string within any program within the application. So you can enter a specific program and change it for that particular program, or else you can change every single program in the system to have that particular string changed. So this has just been a brief overview of the great flexibility of the multilingual and translation capabilities of Dynamic 3i.